Evan, as we are breaking the playoffs into part 1 and part 2, what is the best sequel movie of all time?
The best sequel of all time. I wouldn't say that it's the best sequel of all time, but it is the sequel that deserves to be recognized as among them, and that is Die Hard 2: Die Harder.
Oh my God.
That movie fucking rips.
Yeah, it's underrated. It's definitely underrated. I think that's a really good answer. I think excluding trilogies here, or like natural trilogies, so like you can't say The Empire Strikes Back or whatever.
Or The Two Towers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Though both would be fine inclusions here.
I like how you said natural trilogies, so you can throw The Godfather Part 2 in here potentially.
Correct. The Godfather Part 2, which is an actually planned sequel as opposed to The Godfather trilogy, which is not as like clearly planned.
Well, no, Godfather Part 3 was made because Al Pacino and Francis Ford Coppola needed to settle some bankruptcies.
That's correct. Daddy needed money.
Yeah, there was liquidity required.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's The Godfather Part 2, but I think also Hot Shots Part 1 sucks. Hot Shots Part 2 is really fun.
That's really funny.
Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals Playoffs, Part 2. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I am Evan Davis, and the best movie that isn't a Part 2 sequel, that is a sequel, Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best. That's probably the best Part 4 of all time.
Actually, The Road Warrior is incredible.
It's a good answer. Yeah.
That's a good. We'll go with The Road Warrior on this one. Also, the discussion in Scream 2 of the value of sequels itself is a perfect moment. Sorry, just a big fan of those Scream movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's scream about our next two playoff fixtures that we have to dissect.
The ABC doubleheader on Sunday first game between Washington and Bay FC, number 2 and number 7.
I know that the ELO model says this is the highest chance for upset.
Mm-hmm.
I am inclined, given the relative health of both teams, to agree.
I think that's what the ELO model might be picking up on because of how performances have gone over the last few games for Washington, which is to say not as strongly as they had gone earlier in the season. Still be without Crow Bethune, obviously, but they'll still be without Rosamund Kwasi because of the suspension. Lacey Santos might come back. That's unclear. Trinity Rodman did not look 100% at the end of their final game against North Carolina, so what's going on there? Oulimata Sarr still seems like she's probably not returning either. So, yeah, Washington's in a little bit of rough shape, whereas Bay gets to play their death lineup.
Yeah. And their death lineup is very dangerous, spearheaded by Racheal Kundananji, who against Houston
looked so sick.
Had the run of the game. She put up what, 0.76 XG on her own?
On her own, yes. And then the G plus she generated, which like if you're having a great day, like G plus will say like you're plus 0.1, plus 0.15. I think she was like plus 0.7 or some crazy number. Like she was ruling the roost single-handedly. And again, it's like it's Houston.
It's Houston.
Like, lads, it's Houston. But at the same time, it's super exciting. And we know how much better the team is top to bottom anyway, since Montoya made the midfield change over the summer and then getting the cherry on top with Penelope Hawking and Abby Dahlkemper coming over. And Kundananji, despite being a potential injury risk, did not look like she was having any problems. So this is 26% chance for an upset, according to Trevor Larner's ELO model. And I think that feels appropriate because even if Washington is down a couple of attackers, like as long as you can get 90 minutes out of Trinity Rodman, anything can happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the argument in favor of a Bay upset here is health, is Bay's closing quality down the stretch, just sort of becoming a better team.
Mm-hmm.
Posting the 5th best of the playoff teams' expected points in the final 8 games, posting the 6th best expected points over the final 5, the 6th best over the final 3. They don't have any trouble getting in the box. They don't have any trouble creating goals. They're up against arguably the weakest of the home sides in terms of that team's performance.
I think that's right.
Like, I think it's just the Bay team, all of these things that are good that they do effectively on field are worthy and worth mentioning. They are still, in everything that I have just talked about, worse than Washington was. Mm-hmm. Washington closing down the stretch, the second best team over the final 8 games in terms of expected points, the third best team over the final 5, the second best team over the final 3. So Washington, despite how war ravaged despite Florence Nightingale just bandaging everything, this is still a team that put together a really strong stretch run and is good and is hosting.
And I'll say that I came up with this kind of interesting way of thinking about not only like quality of like your ability to control a game, but also your consistency of ability, which is to say that the league average amount of shots a team allows or allowed this season is about 12 in a game. And the league average non-penalty XG per shot a team allowed over the season was about 0.1. So I decided to look at the playoff teams and the number of games where they conceded at least 12 shots in the game and allowed more than 0.1 non-penalty XG per shot. To give you a sense of like, they're allowing good chances and they're also allowing a high volume of chances. And how many games out of 26 did they do that? So maybe 1 or 2 would suggest a bad day at the office, but many might suggest a more consistent problem. So there's only one team among the playoff teams to have only done this once, where they conceded a worse than average total number of shots in the game and a worse than average XG per shot value in the game. Can you want to guess which team that was that only did that one time all season?
You want to just tell me?
Kansas City.
Yeah.
Kansas City is the only one to do that. But Washington is number 2. They only did it twice all year. So that suggests that for whatever issues they have, they can still lock up shop and not give you a lot of space to move. And Bay should be concerned about that. Now, is the Heather Stainbrook, Hal Hirschfeld, Courtney Brown midfield capable of locking teams down like that? Maybe. Washington didn't have the strongest quality of opposition in that stretch run, I don't think. I think they only played 2 teams in the top 4 in the final 5 or 8 games. Am I right about that?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So has the Hirschfeld, Stainbrook, Brown triangle been tested in the way that a team like Bay might test them? It's open to conjecture, but that is maybe something to think about. But in the aggregate, this is a team that really doesn't get fussed by the bruisers of the league, of which Kundananji is one.
Yeah, Washington is well suited to play almost anyone. And it seems like whatever team they throw out there is roughly as adept at dealing with their opposition as their ideal starting 11. Mm-hmm. And that is a testament to some really spectacular tactical coaching. So I think beyond the Racheal Kundananji problem, which no team has figured out how to solve, I think at times we could discuss Bay this year being a little predictable moving forward in attack. And I think if there is a way, I wonder if Washington will throw out some man-marking plan against Racheal Kundananji. I wonder what Albertine Montoya is thinking about, because it seems very clear that A, she is pretty unstoppable, and B, the question about how to stop Bay is, do we let her run roughshod and deny her all of her passing options and then try to compress space? Or do we try to man-mark her and take her out of the game? Those strike me as the 2 tactical problems that if I'm Jonathan Heraldez right now, I'm grappling with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a younger back line now because Esme Morgan's involved. So there is an advantage and disadvantage to a player like that potentially trying to mark Kundananji out because she'll have a little bit more speed than Tara McKeown, but also at the same time, will she overcommit and leave space in behind? My worry about a player marking strategy to try and take Kundananji out of the game is that you're now opening things up for Oshuala, Bodie, and Hawking, who are no lay-down Sallies, especially for somebody like Hawking, who has real backline stretching capability. That if you are using Kundananji almost as a decoy, because you know that she's going to be marked, all of a sudden Hawking's got a lot more room to operate in. And I think that's a real problem. And I don't know if Washington is going to want to take those kinds of risks. But I don't know. Make the player marking argument for me.
I think the player marking argument is probably not the one I would go with if I'm Jonathan Heraldez. I think if you're going to do it, it's Hal Hirschfeld you want to do it with.
Right, but then Heather Stainbrook can't,
But then you just get dragged all out of sorts.
Yeah, and again, you no longer have a progression base with your double pivot.
Correct.
Stainbrook is now exposed potentially as a single pivot trying to shield the center backs, and you really don't want Penelope Hawking or Asisat Oshuala exploiting that.
Correct. And you don't trust Stainbrook. I just don't think Stainbrook has the athleticism, full stop,
right,
to deal with. I mean, no one has the athleticism, full stop, to deal with Racheal Kundananji.
Yeah.
But Hal Hirschfeld is a better
the closest
bet in that regard.
And everything that we're saying maybe points to the direction of maybe, and we kind of hinted at this in earlier episodes, maybe the real most significant injury here for Washington is Andy Sullivan. That you do not have that steady pair of hands next to Hirschfeld to make sure that someone's minding the store when Hirschfeld goes hunting.
Okay, I'm going to propose, this just occurred to me. I'm going to propose something that I think is insane and also unlikely to happen. But if we were taking the man marking approach, what I actually might do is take Trinity Rodman if Trinity Rodman is up for it, because that is the only person athletically talented enough and defensively astute enough, despite being an attacker, to effectively follow Racheal Kundananji around all game. And then what I'm trusting is, and boy, I'd feel a lot better if I had Croy Bethune in the side. What I'm trusting is I actually have enough attacking talent to deal with a very limited Trinity Rodman contribution to my attack.
I think the worry there, though, is that lately Kundananji has been playing on her natural right side. And
totally.
That's not where Rodman goes. And then
what I mean is, this is why I think we're not going to see the man marking.
Yeah.
Because the best solution is to completely obliterate your own tactical setup.
And potentially not 100% Rodman either. So then all of a sudden you're asking her to run from north, south, east, and west like she was doing in the first half of the year or during the Olympics. And I don't think she's got the juice for it right now.
No, I don't think she has the juice for it now either. I'm just saying, if you needed a person to man mark, we're talking about the Trinity Rodman level of athlete.
Are we talking ourselves? Are we talking ourselves into an upset here?
No. Again, and this is where I think the two prior results are instructive. The 2.1 non-penalty goal differential in their earlier fixtures is the exact same non-penalty goal differential that we saw in Orlando, Chicago. Moreover, a 26% chance per Trevor Larner's ELO model of upset is still relatively low.
Sure.
If you think about it in March Madness standards, when you're filling out your bracket and you see that there's a 26% chance of upset, you're you really got to feel good about that underseed to take that. I think for me, the likeliest matchup or the likeliest upset is probably Gotham Portland. But it's also, I feel fine saying that because the ELO model chances for upset aren't that different between these two things. I don't think this is likeliest for my money.
I think that the injuries really do play this up. And it's also important to remember that the two previous results, Bay was a very different team.
Totally.
Their first match against Washington was on the road, and it was the second game of the year when they were playing like naive bozos and rolling out Savannah King at left back, and Alex Loera was playing as a very aggressive single pivot, and it just didn't look good. And the second game was at home right before the Olympics break, but it was the one game after the sort of the midfield transformation, it was the one game after that occurred where all of a sudden Dana Castellanos came back into the side and they got walloped. So it's a very different team. And so given that fact and given the state of Washington's training table, which is quite full, I think that 26% is fair. And I think it maybe gives them more. I think it's legitimate that they might have more of a chance of upset than Portland over Gotham here. And I'll argue that case once we really get into that game. I think that, yes, when you have Rodman, Hatch is no slouch in replacing Sarr at the 9. Correct. You know, Courtney Brown has looked good. McKenna Morris has looked good. Like, they don't lack for attacking ability. I just wonder what Bay now, with Kundananji, Bodie, and Hawking and Oshuala getting to, like, put Courtney Brown, Heather Stainbrook, and Esme Morgan to the sword. I do wonder.
I don't think there's a clear upset for me among any of these opening round fixtures.
I don't think so either. I just think that this actually, I think I do agree with the ELO model that this is the clearest of the unclear.
Yeah, and I can understand talking oneself into the possibility of Bay being the likeliest given the state of Washington's roster. It's just the state of Washington's roster has yet to demonstrate a serious drop-off from their ideal team. And that is truly impressive.
But I will note that in their final 8 games of the year, they played the top 4 twice, lost both times, and otherwise it was Portland, Houston, Angel City, Louisville, Chicago, and North Carolina, and a North Carolina team that really couldn't be bothered. So I don't know. Yeah,
again, like what I think you've just pointed out is what I would describe as a problem for next weekend for Washington.
Mm-hmm.
In that they, I think, are going to run into a very serious buzzsaw with potentially Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
And like we're looking at some potentially pretty diabolical final worthy games in the semis.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like
if things go chalk in the quarters, all of them will be like that. Yeah.
Yeah. All the semis will be, if things go chalk, we're talking about Kansas City, Orlando, which has already given us some of the best, highest level play fixtures we've seen this season, and terrifying. And we're talking about Washington, Gotham, 2 very good teams. And I think that despite Bay's ability to sort of resolve a lot of the problems that haunted them early in the season, this is a team that still lost 14 games.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
This is a team that down the stretch lost games, gave up 4 XG to Gotham.
Yeah.
This is a team that just played the Houston Dash close.
Yeah.
And that, like, bar Racheal Kundananji maybe didn't outplay the Houston Dash. This is a team that has sort of shown down their stretch run, which was really complicated, an inability to beat teams above them in the table. Should they have beat the Courage? They should have. But they drew. They played the Pride reasonably well. They lost. They played Gotham poorly, lost. They played the Current reasonably well, lost. So there's nothing that Bay has done down the stretch for me that like fills me with that confidence required to like really say I think they've got this Washington team. Will I be surprised if they beat Washington? Only mildly.
Yeah.
It's playoffs. I mean, like, shit happens.
Yeah. And this is the game where potentially more shit could happen.
Yeah, but Washington has not struggled to generate offense as well this season. Like 43 non-penalty goals. You know, they're the 3rd best team in terms of non-penalty goal XG. They take good shots from good locations.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different styles of player that can cause you problem. I think that Washington probably gets over the hump in this one.
Yeah,
But
again,
I think it's, and I think Washington Bay, Portland, Gotham. These are the two fixtures where I think that we have a chance of an upset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really like dealer's choice as far as I'm concerned. Like it's what flavor of upset you want to predict between those two games.
Well, let's talk about Gotham. Let's talk about Gotham Portland.
Let's move on to Gotham Portland. This game is a rematch, a tasty rematch played 3,000 miles away from where it was played last year, of a dreadful watch from last year's playoffs.
Yeah.
A game where the gods opened the skies up. You know, they say about the University of Oregon when the Ducks play football that it never rains in Eugene. Well, it rains in Portland.
quite viciously.
Quite viciously at times. Normally, it's just oppressive rain, the slow drip, drip. Last year, it was rain that put Morgan Weaver off a late winner.
Yeah.
So that game was kind of a wash. What was surprising when we looked under the hood at these matchups this year is that actually between Portland and Gotham, we only have a 0.1 non-penalty goal differential over the two games difference between these two teams.
Yeah.
That's really surprising. Moreover, almost all of that was generated by Gotham's win in New Jersey over Portland. So this game, the ELO model gives it a 20% chance of upset. That feels about right to you?
I actually think maybe it's a little high, but I also think I need to readjust my priors because I have to remember that like Portland is back in goal scoring form because Sophia Smith and Morgan Weaver are back. So there will be opportunities for them to score. Where I worry is that this defense is what it has been for the last couple of months now, which is terrible, like truly unprecedentedly terrible. I think Rob Gale said after they beat Angel City on Friday night that like they've really a lot of their results came from the fact that they struggled with injuries. And yes, that's true that there were injured players in your team, but none of them were on the back line. Like you had a full strength, you had full complement of your back line available the entire year. You had Marie Mueller, you had Renee Reyes, Nicole Payne, Isabella Obeys, Becky Sauerbrunn, and Kelly Hudley. Like they were all there for you from wire to wire. And they only played 2 top 4 teams in this stretch run over the last 8 games, one of which was Washington, incidentally. And they beat Orlando probably fairly, but that was a weird situation because Orlando had clinched the Shield the week before, and I think they were experiencing some hangover. And then they got their ass absolutely destroyed by Washington in that other fixture. And then like they lose to Chicago, deserved it. They drew to Angel City, that's a deserved draw. They lost to San Diego, that was probably deserved. They lost to Utah, maybe you say that should have been a draw. And same thing with the loss to Louisville, but like there's a lot of bad teams that you deserve to lose to in that run. And I don't see how winning 2 out of the last 3 games of the season and having this emphatic win in Christine Sinclair's final game at Providence Park against Angel City really can tell you much about how things are now on the upswing. Like the whole, you know what's funny? I actually wrote about this for Equalizer. I dubbed this thing about that we see in sports narrative a lot. I'm calling it "win it for the Gipper syndrome."
Okay.
Because there was this undercurrent last year that like Gotham went from 6th place to champions because they wanted to win it for Ali Krieger. They all banded together to win it for their veteran who was about to retire. That's a nice story.
Yeah, because Seattle didn't want to win it for Megan Ruffino.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to remember that. And by the way, I guarantee you that every person who said that about Gotham would have said it about Seattle if the result had flipped. And they also ignore that, like, for example, I mean, different kind of personality, but like Carly Lloyd went on a retirement tour in 2021. Gotham made it to the playoffs that year. They got bounced in the first round. Like, this is not a thing.
Yeah, this is
how will you
decidedly
like I want to look at people in the eye and be like, if Gotham beat Portland at the weekend, I want to look people in the eye and be like, oh, so Portland Thorns players didn't want to win it for Sinclair? They didn't care?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? Sophia Smith's on the sideline talking to Leanne Sanderson in tears about how much she loves Christine Sinclair. Like, get fuck all the way off with that shit.
Also, the win one for Sink is kind of hard when she already has 3 league titles.
Oh, that's the other thing. She's actually one of the winningest in terms of titles. Like, she's one of the winningest players in history.
Yeah, exactly. She just like wins shit
all the time. You go back to WPS, you go to the international level. Like, she's got so many trophies. So I find that to be a pretty stupid explanation for like why Portland is winning, especially when you look, it's like they're not beating good teams really, except that one weird fluky Pride performance.
Orlando benched their starters.
Yeah, like I don't see how this team doesn't leak goals against Gotham. I don't see it.
Yeah, my take on this is some of what we have seen from Portland all season, like the statistical profile that we have for Portland all season basically has never included both a healthy Morgan Weaver and a healthy Sophia Smith.
Fair.
We have seen Portland play this entire season with one hand behind its back, and without 2 of the best 5 attackers in the league last year. You know, like those 2 combined are a terrifying tandem.
Mm-hmm.
And at the weekend against Who Cares Angel City, we saw what they are capable of. Now, do I think Rob Gale is like super capable of deploying them in a way that gets through Gotham? No, not really. And do I think that I think for all of the Portland is trending in the right direction stuff, let's talk about Gotham, who have grabbed 22 points from their last 24 available points over the last 8 games.
Sure have.
Who have posted a league best 16 expected points over their last 8 games. A league best 10.18 expected goal points over their last 5 games. And a league best 7 points over their last expected points over their last 3 games.
Yep.
This team is on a terror.
Yep.
And by the way, they are also, by some margin, the best team at getting box touches and making sure their opposition doesn't get box touches.
Yeah. A plus 326 box touch differential.
It's outrageous.
Yeah, crazy.
723 box touches this year, only allowing 397 box touches this year.
Yeah.
Like we have extolled the virtues of Kansas City and Orlando's defenses a lot on this podcast. Both of those defenses have allowed 70 plus more box touches or 69 plus more box touches.
A league best defense both by raw goals allowed and by XG allowed.
Yeah. And then you have just Ankatrin Berger there, should the box touches result in a shot. Like it's the one thing that gives Portland hope here is that their 2 weapons in Sophia Smith and Morgan Weaver are 2 of the best box penetrating, shot creating attackers in the league. They are they as a tandem, it's a problem that Gotham, I think, did see in week 2 and lost the XG goal differential on that one. I mean, Gotham wins in Portland in week 2.
Yeah.
But this Portland team has interesting weapons. And they are just going up against a team who I think are really well suited to deal with them.
The one thing that you might say that goes in Portland's favor is that Smith and Weaver are not going to be attacking Emily Sonnet and Tierna Davidson. They're going to be attacking Emily Sonnet and Samantha Hyatt, who we've mentioned a couple of times.
Who's still very good.
Who's still good. But like the reason that they've had a league best defense is because the triangle in the middle of the box of Berger, Sonnet, and Davidson is pretty impenetrable. And Hyatt just allows a little bit of penetration that players like Smith and Weaver don't need much to exploit. So if Weaver and Smith are really clicking, and if Sinclair and Olivia Moultrie can provide the kind of lock-picking support around a player like Neely Martin, who I do think is a bit overrated defensively, and if you can keep Delaney Sheehan at bay, there may be room to operate in. Now, what they're going to have to deal with is to break the first line of pressure, which is going to come from Esther and from Lynn Williams, two of the best defending forwards in the league. So that is step one. That's maybe a more of a difficult challenge because you have Becky Sauerbrunn and either Isabella Obes or Kelly Hubley as your passing center backs. You worry about that.
Yeah, I think the hesitation that you have in this game is about these very marginal things where, like, Sophia Smith is one of the best long-range shooters in the world and has been that, I'll bring the term back for the laughs, that unicorn for a very long time. And we saw a unicorn Katie Stengel goal win this fixture last year, and that might be the margin this year.
Potentially.
The other thing that has frustrated you to no end, and I actually think Gotham have, over their last 8 games, resolved this problem, generally
I agree with what you're about to say, by the way.
Is that Gotham are notoriously good at getting box touches and turning them into notoriously little. In terms of shots and shot production. Like, it's kind of stunning how good Gotham is at winning the ball high up the pitch, at creating good touches close in, and at not turning that into end product. Over the last 8 games, they kind of have resolved that problem. Some of that is Esther, some of that...
on a heater.
Yeah, not even on a heater, just like getting shots.
Oh, like, yeah, totally. Like, their season-long XG finished at about 40, which is, like, very respectable. I mean, they scored 38 non-penalty goals, which means they're generating more chances than went in. That's a good sign. And even at the per-shot level, like, almost 0.12 XG per shot generated. They weren't doing that earlier in the season. So, you're right.
Yeah, here's their XG, by the way. Over the last 4 fixtures that they played, just individual fixtures, they put up 4, 2.2.
There's some penalties in there, just FYI.
Yeah, no, of course. But you have to be in the box to win penalties, which is a thing that they are very good at.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, 4, 2.2, 2, and 3.5. That's their last 4 fixtures.
Yeah.
Like, Gotham is trending in exactly the right direction at exactly the right time. And so whatever you want to say about Portland's momentum and the win one for the sink thing, Gotham is and has been becoming the monster we thought that they would be going into this season toward the end of this. And it is what, like, if we're lucky, we do get, like, the Kansas City Gotham final, where it is the team that we thought would be there and the team that has surprised us and played the best soccer all year.
Hence calling it the XOG Derby.
The XOG Derby as a final would be so epic. But I think that on their side of the bracket, Gotham are as well positioned as you can be to take advantage of the way their final position laid out.
Yeah.
And that Portland is a small problem in that.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, just to tally it all up, their final 4 games, almost 11 non-penalty XG generated, and that was best in the league in that time frame by a considerable margin. So this isn't empty momentum, to put it mildly. And again, yes, you're right. They have solved their problems. Esther has found a groove. I think the other part is that they're healthy. Like, that attack hasn't been 100% together at the same time basically all year. And to have some combination of a foursome or a fivesome of Lynn Williams, Ella Stevens, Esther, Rose Lavelle, and Yasmin Ryan, that is a bevy of riches and shows that, like, when they are all available and they're all 100%, they can produce the kind of attack that you would expect from a team that plays the way that they do.
Also, no team has the depth should they lose one of these players.
Well, like I said,
just draw in on
one of those. I just mentioned 5 players for 4 slots. You know, one of those players, it's probably going to be Lynn Williams or Ella Stevens that ends up going to the bench. But no, Portland doesn't have a player like that to come on in the 60th minute and go chase a goal.
No, and if you want, throughout this entire conversation, if you want me to pick why I think Portland slightly more likely, still unlikely, to beat Gotham over Bay beating Washington, it is that Sophia Smith is better at creating goals than Racheal Kundananji is in terms of her XG.
Yeah.
That is they are both very good at creating like Sophia Smith is better at creating opportunities just for herself than Racheal Kundananji is. They are roughly equivalent when it comes to creating opportunities for everyone. Like XG plus XA.
The one thing that I will say that maybe gives Portland some chance of some stability and maybe a little bit more control of the game is that Hina Sugita is back. Yeah. And that gives Rob Gale actually a bunch of tactical options because he can use Jesse Fleming and Sam Coffey in the double pivot, move Hina out wide on the right and have her like come in when they're out of possession and to form a 3. Or he can try and push Fleming a little bit higher, maybe a little bit wider, try and form a double 10 with Olivia Moultrie or Christine Sinclair, which is actually a very like solid and sturdy kind of midfield. If it's those 4 players, if you pull Hina in alongside Coffey, like it's going to be hard to get to the center backs if it's Coffey and Hina in front of them. So that is a big potential advantage that was not available to Portland for long stretches of this very fallow period because she'd been out injured.
That coupled with the absence of Tierna Davidson is interesting.
It's interesting, but also you have to say that like Portland looked bad in the 3 games after the Olympics when Hina was in the team. So she's not a perfect solve for all of these issues. But there are wrinkles here. And I think that, you put Dorian Bailey and Kiki Pickett under a little bit of pressure. Maybe they can't, find the time to progress the ball and get it to those forwards. At the same time, like you put Neely Martin and Delaney Sheehan under some pressure. Okay, that's interesting, But on the flip side, maybe those forwards, maybe Esther and Lynn Williams just run roughshod over the Portland backline, and they never have time.
That's right.
Other than to try and like hoof it long, which is like, potentially can work as a plan B because Sophia Smith and Morgan Weaver are so good as like hyper direct dribble into space kinds of players. But I don't think that's what Rob Gale wants to do. And the Gotham defense is not going to get exposed to that way like a lot of other teams would.
No, I think key in this fixture is, and why I think I'd probably start Lynn Williams, is what Lynn Williams can do to make sure Sam Coffey, one of the best long ball players in the league, can't do in terms of turning defense into attack with long range passing to find Weaver and Smith on runs. I think having Esther and Williams gives you the opportunity to deny Sam Coffey access to the ball out of the back quickly.
So you use Esther in the 9 and then you use Williams on the left.
Yeah.
They're like their usual triangle that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then Stevens can be the super sub in case you got to go snatch one.
Correct.
I don't hate that.
And I think that Amoros understands the value of players like Sam Coffey perfectly, and his system
as proven last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And literally as proof of concept with a worse team last year in the playoffs. There is a rich narrative irony available to us where Portland, easily the best team in terms of XG last year, got bounced by a team that sort of inched their way into the playoffs barely. And now the tables are turned where Portland is that team who sort of like backed into the playoffs. And they are going to play a sort of invincible bastion in this Gotham team down the stretch. And in their house. And we could just see that narrative flipped on its head, and it would like be rich irony. I just think it's unlikely, as it was unlikely last year that Gotham won.
Yeah. I agree. 20% chance of an upset. We'll see if those come to pass.
Can I just say, if we get Ann Berger versus Shelby Hogan as our penalty matchup, like it's just so like even if Portland can scrape it to penalties, it's still ugly.
In fairness, we've never seen Shelby Hogan in a penalty shootout, really. So like we don't know what she could do in that context.
It's mostly Ann Berger, yeah.
We've seen Berger basically go stone cold with her hands behind her back until you're ready to kick the ball, as she did in the Olympics. So, advantage Gotham.
Yeah.
So we are thinking Orlando versus Kansas City in the semifinal, Washington versus Gotham in the semifinal on the other side of the bracket. Let's not belabor this too long, but what's the final? I think it's still going to be KC Gotham. But I don't say that with a massive amount of confidence.
I think it is important to hedge here and say, very not confident about what I'm going to posit here, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think I agree that Casey finally figures it out against the Pride, and that Washington runs into the buzzsaw of just a much better team against Gotham.
Yeah.
And then the finals, anybody's bet. Yeah.
Washington, I think, is plus 1.8 in their 2 games against Gotham. So they played them very well, but they played them early. They played them in the first half of the season both times. So different situation now. Okay. So you will hear from us again on Patreon if you are a Patreon subscriber on Thursday, talking to Jill Lloyden about goalkeeping and goalkeeping in the NWSL playoffs. And then you will catch us on probably Instagram Live or some facsimile thereof on Friday to see if I have to drink a shot of Malort during Orlando, Chicago. And then on Sunday, you can join us if you are a Patreon subscriber to watch our YouTube live stream of Gotham Portland on Sunday afternoons. So buckle up for lots of content from us this week and in the coming weeks. It's going to be a wild, wild time until we get to the NWSL Championship at California Pizza Kitchen Stadium. So rate us, review us, follow us. Rate us 5 stars if you're going to rate us at all. Tell all your friends about us. Drop a comment in your podcatcher of choice if you have the ability to do so. Follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X Own Goals on all social channels, including Blue Sky. And if you believe we've made an own goal, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. Follow us, subscribe to our Patreon for only $6 a month, where you get 4 bonus episodes every single month, plus Discord access, plus our YouTube live streams. In the show notes, click on the link and subscribe to our Patreon.
I got to go out with an own goal here, called out to us by one of those comments from one of those podcatchers on Spotify. Angie Wu, you are correct. I was wrong. It was ESPNW's Instagram account that misled us, believing it was New Zealand, not Iceland, that we were going to see the Kelly O'Hara memorial fixture. That was my...
ESPN still made the bigger own goal, to be fair.
That was my mistake and my annoyance and my quick scrolling through social media. The U.S. women's national team themselves did nothing wrong. ESPNW's account reported this poorly. And then ESPN, I regurgitated
They are the
it.
culprits.
Yeah. Blame the worldwide leader in sports. Bye.
Okay. We'll see you guys on Patreon on Thursday, and then we will see you on YouTube on Sunday. Bye-bye.